Coming to you live from the underground. My name is Drew Goldman, and this is Closed Circuit Sports, where we are getting way better than 1% every day. Today, we have a couple of iRacing replays from about a year ago. This was just after I'd gotten the Moza R9 and the GS GT wheel. This was F4. This was Virginia International Raceway. We're going to go with the one that started from lower on the grid first because it's more chaos. And if we can find the part where it gets boring, we're going to fast forward through it. But we're going to recap this as best as we can and try and stay on track because I am still very much trying to figure out what this channel is going to be. It's going to be a lot of things, I think. I know I haven't taken the time to properly introduce myself. And I know that this kind of a video isn't the place to do it until we are at least deep into it. So that's what's funny about this whole racing format, right? Is that it's about the cars. It's about the game. It's about the competition. It's about all the little things. So what we're doing right now is pulling up this replay from VIR in the F4. I'm trying to just avoid showing you guys the spoiler alerts, and I definitely did there if you were to look closely enough, but you don't know which one it is. Haha. So we are here about a year ago. It's a fixed race. It's 20 minutes. I'm going to try and make it as cinematic as possible, but I'm about to goof that up so that I can give you guys some music. Because I figured out how to do that now, because I have old stuff that still sounds good. And it sounds better than just the pure sound of the car, I think. It's good to have a little something to liven it up. Especially when I know that no one's going to get mad at me for copyright stuff because it's mine. I've been making beats since I was, well, fine making beats properly. I can't. Alright, so this might be a little bit too close if we want. There we go. Okay, so this gives us enough of a view of the track, I think, and enough of the view of the car that we can talk about how loose I was driving before, because I wasn't driving at full force. I wasn't driving at the full 9. So I wasn't even giving myself the full bandwidth of what this wheelbase is capable of. And man, I just, as the capability of my upper body and core to keep up with this wheelbase, this direct drive system for whatever, the length of an IndyCar open setup race or a fixed, even just a fixed F1 race at full force in VR, that opened up the true spirit of this wheel. There's no level below that where you're really having to try, and that was kind of like the bridge I had to cross. Was, okay, is it a really, really, really expensive video game controller, or is it a entry-level simulator? And I had to decide it was the latter, and begin to respect the competition as such, because when I looked up the stats of some of these pro drivers, right? Some of these real life guys, IndyCar guys, F2 guys, F3, F4, F1, of course. It's absurd what some of them can pull off in iRacing, because there isn't really a space in iRacing that isn't skill-based matchmaking. It only pairs you up with the people who are racing right then, who are best suited to race with you. So if you're Max Verstappen and you have 6,000 iRating and you step into a lobby of F4, it's going to give you the 19 next best iRacing F4 drivers available at that time, because iRacing functions on a schedule. So you get to race every 2 hours or so with this, or 2 hours exactly. Who am I kidding? With the exact same car and the exact same format at the same track for that week. The tracks change every week. Monday evenings, Monday nights. I think it's Monday midnight GMT. So it would be Tuesday midnight, Tuesday morning midnight. You know what I mean? 12 a.m. 00 GMT. So that's the British, I think. Their Greenwich Mean Time, which I think is 5 hours ahead of Eastern. But I'm winging that. We're still just qualifying here, but even in qualifying, you can see how loose I'm hanging the rears, and that's because I didn't have the force turned all the way up yet. I really didn't know what I was missing out on. Even with it turned all the way up, though, I had to look up metrics to try and understand how much 9 newtons of force really is and what it is compared to the real driving forces. And I've been learning a lot through basically shopping for what the next step would be. And I did quite a bit of that. Looking for what the next step would be from the Logitech G29, which is what I had previously. I had some recordings from the G29 era, but they got lost when I rebuilt the computer to try and handle streaming. And I'm not mad at that, honestly, because this was a game changer. This new setup was. And I went from the bottom of the bottom to the top of the middle relatively quickly, but essentially in line with how quickly I turned up the force on the wheelbase. I had to understand that it was becoming more and more real, and put in commensurate effort, right? Because the better you do race over race, the better racers you get to race against next time. So if you win a lobby where you were already doing like you scrap one out, you barely win, you're probably gonna get clapped the next time you get out there, because you're gonna have jumped a pretty significant little margin if you get a good win, especially against a lobby that is competitive, right? And it's amazing how quickly, in terms of iRating, you end up out of cruddy lobbies. People used to call it getting out of rookies, and there's something to that. That was something that I did, but I didn't understand that my iRacing my iRating and my safety rating should really rise at the same time and fall at the same time. Off track already. Sometimes you can manage to scrap something useful out of a race that went poorly. So if you get wrecked in the first lap of a long race, but not badly enough to end the race, like to the point where you can still get back out there, you should. Because you should pick up all of those final places in the race. There's other guys who aren't going to finish, who are in front of you and have yet to wreck still. If you get back out on track, learn to play nice as lap traffic, and take those easy positions where you can get them, you can still probably get some safety rating out of it, and by picking up those easy positions, you can keep as much of your iRating as possible, even when it goes that poorly. What is so terribly unfortunate about iRacing is that the higher up you go, the hotter the competition is. So the higher chance you have for chaos. The lower down you are, the more stratified the competition will be. There are certain sessions of, oh boy. Okay. Certain sessions of F4, certain sessions of F3, certain sessions of Super Formula and Super Formula Lights right now that are absolutely lit. Mazda MX-5 is absolutely packed with drivers all the time. I'm talking about like a dozen splits, like 10 splits, 8 splits of drivers. If you can get 160 drivers together, you're gonna have 6, 7, maybe even 8 great races. But that bottom one and the second from bottom and the third from the bottom, sometimes if it's deep enough, they're gonna be chaos. And that's because people don't understand what braking points are yet. They don't understand actual racecraft yet. All they actually understand this could be fun, but it wouldn't be best for storytelling. It would be best viewpoint. I wish I could. Ooh, there we go. Okay, hang on. Yeah, it's best for showing us how it was going, focused on us, directly overhead. It's probably the best one. I do love the cockpit cam. I do love the gyroscope. I do love the roll bar. The gearbox is a good way to see how close everything is behind you. Roll bar's a good one. There's a whole bunch of good camera angles. I wish that I could change them without pulling up this damn menu, but it is what it is. We're gonna go with Far Chase because it is the easiest for storytelling. We're starting from, wait. Starting from 14th. Can't believe I just showed the results, but it is what it is. Hopefully it was small enough that nobody else could make that out. Maybe, whatever. We'll go from here. But the shit gets crazy in Formula 4. I ain't even going front. Lights out and away we go. We got decent clutch slip. We got a good takeoff. I'm lucky to finally have that bound to a paddle on my wheel. The GS comes with 4. Homie in front of us, dangling off the edge. I was nervous about him and gave a little space there. But a little bit of a gap behind us, given that we can't see anybody on the angle we got at the moment. Oh, there they come. Okay, and this is the issue with Formula 4 racing, is that with everybody in the same stuff, everybody in spec. Oh, this guy's a missile. Oh no. Okay. I'll fall in with him, and hopefully we'll keep pace with the pack ahead. But all right, so there's one position. Formula 4 is so crazy because everything is spec. Everything is the same. Everyone has the same equipment at their disposal. And in a fixed setup race like this one, you can't even change the wing angle. I think you can change the roll bars still if you're really good and if you're really smart. But really all I mess with over here is brake bias. Just not even DRS. What else can you do? I'm sure I'll find other stuff eventually, but everybody basically runs the lowest tire pressure. Nobody wants to run anything higher than that because why would you? It gives you the most grip and it gives you the most temperature, gets you into the working temp window most easily, and it's only a 20-lap race. You're not really going to have to worry about tires, even with them being slicks. Yes, I know that guy just offed himself, but I was making a point. You have to play through that. You have to play through that. There's not even a, don't hesitate. Just make sure he's not going into your path. Make sure you can calculate the path he's taking as he exits the track. Yeet. That's why we went the inside there rather than trying the outside. Sometimes it's very hard to tell, but usually based on where they are in the spin and how long they stay there, you can tell where they're headed. It's definitely a guessing game, but it's an educated guessing game the more you see it. I've seen it a lot on ovals, and I have seen it quite a bit just in road racing in general. Road racing is its own beast though, man. I love it, but I understand why people who don't love racing find it boring. It's because there's not a lot of position changes. Something like this could be classified as an exciting race pretty easily because we went from 14th already to 12th. And it's going to end up being like an 11 lap race if I'm right. 20 laps, coming in around 2 minutes, and going to be less than that this time around. I was lapping here in the F4 car today, and it was somewhere in the 150, 149. Like the pace was 148.0 as far as I could tell, which is crazy. But at this point, I was still kind of driving on glass. I was definitely driving with the power steering on, essentially, because I had the fundamentals, but I didn't understand that it was supposed to be so physical. I thought I was doing something wrong. There's 153. Okay. So, obviously, whoop, missing our braking point entirely there. Went way too deep. Must have seen that something was happening ahead because I shouldn't have gone that wide, but we get one more there. He goes off again, and we get him too. Alright, so they must have all had some kind of serious kerfuffle. Ooh, we got a big ol' wiggle. Pushing way too far over the limit. But we would never have been able to save that with the Logitech G29, and that's what makes this such a good investment, is that in real life, you would be able to save that because you would be able to feel it because the tires are so heavy. It's a 1,500 pound car with about 160 horsepower in this game. In real life, I believe they have close to 180. And there's no power steering. I don't know how these little kids are doing this, but I guess it's what teaches them that they have to hit the gym as well. F4, F3, and F2 all supposedly have no power steering, which blew my mind because honestly, I thought F2 had to have it because it's trying to teach guys how to drive an F1. I don't know whether Super Formula has it. I need to Google that. I'm going to actually right now because we're kind of lapping on our own at the moment. I know IndyCar doesn't, but that's part of the legend of IndyCar, is that those guys can have to fight with 30 pound-feet of torque through that steering wheel, which is somewhere around 40 Newton meters of torque, maybe 42, 43. This guy must have just been flying. You let faster drivers through if you're a smart driver, because you get to follow and you get to maybe even apply pressure if they were over ambitious and put themselves ahead of you and weren't actually better than you. You can apply some pressure and maybe battle, but you don't want to be trying to keep them behind you at the cost of your own lap time, because that's your race time. That's your time relative to the rest of the race. Racing for position is only as important as the position is. If you're fighting for 7th, if you're fighting for 8th, if you're fighting for 10th, let them through. The difference between 11th and 10th is not that significant. The difference between finishing the race and not finishing is very significant. Anyway, Formula One definitely has power steering, and when I looked it up, they basically said their maximum forces on the wheel, granted they go through higher G-forces because they have so much more downforce and so much more grip, but the maximum steering forces they go through is about 15 Newton meters of torque, which is 1 kilogram moving at 1 meter per second. That's 1 Newton meter. So 9 is 9 kilograms moving at 1 Newton meter, or 1 meter per second. Yeah, I think that's right. So 6.6 pound-feet of torque. is what the Moza R9 is giving you through your hands as you're hanging it in a no power steering car. Super Formula power steering? They do. Good. I know Formula E does not, and that's crazy. So they go through like 30 or 35 newton meters of force, which is like 25 pounds of torque. So those guys are much more physical athletes than I had previously given them credit for, and we should start. But so is F4 and so is F3, oddly enough. Okay, we're getting gobbled up again. But we want everybody to end up where they're supposed to end up. Oh, this guy's wild for just falling back in there. He's probably about to see himself off. He's driving right on the edge. Formula 2 power steering? They don't have... Oh, yes. Okay, correct mundo. No power steering in F2. I feel like they're probably about to remove that from F1, if I had to guess. Because that's going to become an attack on the sport very quickly. If Formula E doesn't have power steering, Formula 2 doesn't have power steering, IndyCar doesn't have power steering, Super Formula and Formula 1 are probably going to remove it sooner or later. If they hang on to it, I will be surprised. But it seems like everybody's got new regulations coming in the next few years, so we'll see what happens there. As we cross the line, we're in 10th. Even with letting those couple of guys past us, we're still in 10th. And some of those guys were driving themselves out of their cars, and we could tell. So, you let the race come to you. You drive your race. You let guys who are gaining on you at a ridiculous rate pass you. It's the safest thing for you is to watch them go in front of you, because if they can keep it on track, you get to learn. If they can't, you get to watch where they go and feel a lot better about yourself. Because sometimes people are pushing the car so hard that it's not in their control. They're just squeezing. It took me a long time to learn car control, but once I found it, I just wanted more. I kept wanting to turn up the power. I tried to see whether I could kind of overclock the wheelbase, and it's not good. There's no... You don't want it over 100%. Whatever you have it set, whatever your wheel is, you don't really want it. I take that back. Okay, there are a couple of times where I've gotten it to work well at 9.2 or 9.7, but it's very much dependent on the car. There's a couple of cars that I've had it turned up way past that point, and it was not great. It was interesting to try and match, like to try and get the 9 newton meters of torque to instead clock 15, but it wasn't quite right. It doesn't do it. It doesn't have it. It only has what it has. It's a motor. There's only so many horsepower it has within it, basically. It's just electric horsepower. So, watching them battle, hoping that they'll take each other out, but we'll see. Oh, we got a boink, but he's through. Gaining easily now. Okay, through past the Marlboro. Oh, and a big wiggle, and we're about to give it right back. Picked up some sand too. I think I was running it at about 5 or 6 at this point. In reality, because I think I was running it at like 80% on the wheelbase, but I was running it like 10 in the game, so it might have been giving me 6 or 7 newtons of torque, but I was absolutely able to push past it like I was on glass, which is like, it was giving me more than my Civic, that's for damn sure, but not by a ton. This guy's about to have me here. I did not know how to take Oak Tree yet. I did know to not give him the slipstream coming down the straight, though, and to cover the inside, but it's only the inside for the first bend of the corner. He's probably going to have me. He didn't take me. Okay. Can we get it in? We do get it around the corner. Way too deep, but we get through the corner and we keep some space. Let's see if I can... Oh my goodness. I don't know what it is about the steering that was different. Like, I'm trying to see it in my hands. We're going to go to... Okay. I'm definitely just turning in too late, that's for certain. And not braking hard enough. Like, I'm not getting everything out of the car. I'm very much like trying to feel where the limit is. And backing off of it as quickly as I get actual slip. Which is good, but the only reason I'm getting actual slip is because I'm not at full power. But that's also the reason that I wasn't getting tired, which is why it still felt like a video game. Oh my goodness. There's so much to learn from this game that you just can't get from a G29, but you can't still be learning G29 level lessons. And oh my goodness. And make the jump to a wheel like this because you're going to be overmatched. Not just by the wheel, but by your competition. And you're not going to know what's wrong, and you're going to quit because you're going to think you're not good enough. I had to, like, really get a different mentality about this sport and understand that this is a game like any other. And sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it goes poorly. But if you want to race against other real human beings, there are going to be some variables. And racing against computers just feels hollow at this point, I ain't even gonna lie. Because there's a dance that we do with the AI. If you are a sim racer, or if you have ever loved a racing game, you know this dance. The dance is the percentage. If it's on a slider, there's a certain percentage where you know that the game is just cheating. No one can do that. You think to yourself. And then you go on YouTube and you find Jarno Opmeer beating that AI. And you go, oh my god. And you understand that anything's possible! With the proper amount of obsession and work. Make no mistake, it's work. It's a linear equation. There is work. There is money involved, but there is work. And the work has to be done first, before the money would be any good as an investment. If you don't know the difference between oversteer and understeer, you're not going to know the difference between spinning on the exit of a corner and spinning on the entry in a corner. Because you're not going to know what leads to each. You have to do all this research. You don't know what you don't know until you're in the driver's seat. So I would still recommend something like the G29. If not the G29, then and its Xbox counterpart, the G920. I would recommend the Moza R9 and the SRP pedals, because the SRP pedals are load cell pedals. But there are plenty of good entry points now. Older sim rigs that are now very affordable used. All the early Fanatec stuff is super affordable now. And it's all still really pretty good quality stuff, especially for GT cars. If you're a person who loves Need for Speed and you want to make the jump into sim racing, or at least get a taste of it, or you want to be able to play Assetto Corsa Competizione, the R5 is definitely a better place to start than, or even a Camus. The Camus, or Camus, however they pronounce it, CAMMUS. They make very cheap direct drive stuff. and I will always recommend direct drive over anything belt fed, but if you're gonna go with something belt fed, go with something Fanatec. Thrustmaster are decent, but it's very much like, it's very Logitech-y, it's very video gamey. The Moza, when I took it out of the box, I felt like I had taken a giant step forward. Just build quality is such an overused phrase in sim racing that it makes me cringe that I just used it. But it's so true. It's so sturdy. The Logitech is adorable by comparison, and that is the best way I can put it. The Logitech is gear driven, so when you go over the red line of what the force feedback is capable of on the G29, it just clicks. It clicks. It stops giving you anything else, and it only gives you 2.2 newton meters of torque, I believe was what it showed me. And that's like 1 pound of torque. That's like 1 pound-foot of torque. We're currently in 7th on lap 11. This is probably our final lap of the race. If it's not, I'm surprised. But you see how lonely road racing gets toward the end of a 20-minute race because everybody stratifies. This guy who did this time during qualifying kept doing that time during the race, and this guy who did this time behind him kept doing his time during the race. So at the end of the race, they're 15 seconds apart. You know what I mean? Anyway. The first thing that I did with that Logitech was upgrade the springs and the pedals, and it was a good move. It made the accelerator a little heavier, it made the brake a little heavier, it made everything feel a little bit weightier. But you can't do anything for the top half besides, and I will recommend, iRFFB. That's a free program that you can literally just Google and download and install and run, and it is awesome. Look up recommended settings for whatever your wheel is, but damn if that didn't help. I don't know whether it would do me any good with what I'm currently running, but it could be worth a shot. I haven't tried that yet. I have not been running iRFFB with the direct drive because I think direct drive is like, you don't want the filter there, if I'm not mistaken, but who knows? I might have just connected a dot for myself. I will definitely be looking into that. So we keep going deep here, and we're trying to carry as much as we can, but I think it's more like I didn't have the right turn-in point, so I felt like I was missing the apex, and I was. There I'm taking too much apex and lifting too much. That was pretty nice, actually. Definitely tentative on the gas, though. Definitely late on the upshift there. So basically, I've been getting deeper and deeper into this through things like coaching, through trying to understand what makes a racing setup, trying to understand the difference between horsepower and torque, trying to understand what brake bias is, and then once I actually understood what it was, I mean in terms of how you can utilize it within the car, looking up what brake migration was in F1 and trying to figure out the difference between entry, mid, and exit differential, and oh my goodness, all this ERS and oh my goodness. Push to pass and all these different settings and the oh my god, the roll bars. When I finally learned about what the roll bars did, I was like, Eureka! Still haven't figured out how to properly manipulate it within a race. But the principles finally have clicked because I have watched enough YouTube videos and Googled enough different questions and listened to enough race commentary to actually understand, to a larger or lesser extent, what the hell we're talking about when it comes to setup changes. So we just watched that one. We're gonna go to one that went slightly better, but same track and car combo. Cause this is just the difference between what we were going through back then and what we're going through now. And it's a really good way to encapsulate it. The string theory of driving is something that I touched on in my last attempt at a video, and I did not even attempt to explain it. I just mentioned it. But concepts like these are hard to come across if you're a gamer, right? If you're a fan of sim racing, if you're a fan of racing generally. But I remember during the pandemic, I was not yet into proper sim racing. I had F1 on the Xbox with a controller. So I would watch guys like Jimmy Broadbent, who had great sim racing setups that already had a direct drive wheel at a point where not many people did. I got to watch that guy play in VR and daydream about, man, that would be so much fun to have infinite tires, to have infinite fuel, to have basically the equivalent of the Ben 10 watch as a racing wheel. One wheel to rule them all, so to speak. Man, it felt like the ultimate video game, the ultimate video game, because I've been lucky to, since then, have a VR headset, and I had really gotten it so that I could use it for iRacing. I first used VR before ever getting a G29. I had gone to an arcade. I paid for whatever, an hour of sim racing with a G29 and an old, a Windows mixed reality headset that I can't even recall the name of right now. And I'm sure their company will thank me for that, whoever it was, because it was fine. But they're very lucky that it was my first experience with true VR. Oh no, off track. Dang. Because both of the headsets I've tried since then blew it out of the water what was available there. But what they did was they threw me into Project Cars 2 for an hour, and I had a blast. I managed to win on, I think it was easy. Whether that was 20 or 40, I do not know. In that simulator, I have taken quite some time since I have raced in there. Once I really knew what it was, it stopped being so high on my priority list. Like R Factor, God, R Factor 2 is the worst interface simulator I have ever played. It's so heavy. It's so clunky. I rebuilt my PC recently, and it still is clunky for that thing. So was KartCraft, I gotta say. Like, I tried to make a video about KartCraft and the gap between karting and cars, and I went from Assetto Corsa in the F600, the biggest go-kart, the smallest race car, the F600, which I love, and then jumped down into KA100. And in KA100, in a race, it was giving me frame rate issues. And I was like, what? And it was because I was trying to record, I think. But I had stuff turned down. I was playing it on the monitor. I even tried turning down the monitor resolution, like what it was displaying, to 1080, and it's still, I was like, what the hell? So I blame Motorsport Games, because clearly I can run on decent settings. There are still some things that I've trimmed so that it's VR capable, and I could probably turn those things up to a closer to max for these kinds of videos. And I might do that in the future. I might have basically like a YouTube profile. Interesting. All right. Well, I'm still trying to optimize these things, and I'm kind of voicing these things out loud. But anyway, no, I'm legitimately voicing these things out loud. There's no secret there. Anyway, we're riding my train of thought right now. This is so much better with music, even if it's quiet. So, I do enjoy this angle, but this is as close as we can get. Wait, where is it? There we go. To the VR view. I go this close because of how far the monitor is away from me. It's not that far, but this makes it feel so much more like a window, like an actual windshield, given its distance from me, than any other angle I've tried. And believe me, it took a very long time to figure that out and finally concede defeat to the sim racing FOV police. That, alright, yeah, you're right. Like, as soon as I had a dash on my rig, it all clicked. What hasn't clicked yet is that I should probably turn off the hands moving when I'm racing for the immersion to be complete. But in VR, it's absolutely useful for the body doubling aspect of it. When you're looking at the monitor, though, it is best for those rev lights to stay in the same place. But you want the angle of your windshield to basically be where you would be relative to the car. And that takes a creative visualizing mind. Bend your brain a little bit and you can get there. If you like sim racing, you already do the thing where you kind of project your consciousness forward into the car that you are racing. And if you don't, you're probably not that great. No offense. If you've never tried it, try it. Like, even with Need for Speed, even with Burnout, even with Gran Turismo, and I'm not dissing Gran Turismo, I'm just saying it's an entry point where you're watching behind the car. Most people play that game from behind the car. If you play from behind the car, it's a fucking arcade game. Forgive me. And that's not to say that you can't play the F1 games from behind the car. You're just not going to be able to play on a very high difficulty. And if you can, you're a wizard, Harry. Cockpit view and the alternate nose view are basic, and I guess the TV pod view too, are pretty much undefeated for the F1 games. But when it comes to these simulators, field of view is definitely a measurement that you should pay attention to, given whatever you're playing on. I was playing on like a 28-inch flat screen monitor, like a 1080 flat screen monitor at first when I got my PC rebuilt to the point where I was able to get iRacing and use my G29. I did not have the Rift yet, and so I was playing in the Mazda, playing in the MX-5, trying to do the thing that I had always done in video games, which is the projecting myself forward into the car. And it was very difficult, I gotta say. That gap was hard to bridge when it came to iRacing, when it came to Assetto Corsa, when it came to even Project Cars at first. Once you figure out mechanics of a simulator, like once you played enough simulators next to each other, you can feel the differences between them. The tire feel is the best in R Factor 2, but the interface is so bad that it's sometimes not even playable. For certain mods with certain tracks, or even with certain content you paid for, like just a steering angle will be wrong for one corner. Like you won't have a setup for that, and you won't know how to manipulate it, and it just won't be playable because it would be more work than it's worth at a certain point. And games like iRacing, services like iRacing, blur the line. Little chaos up front there. Everybody squeeze. I went deep to try and give Fanatec behind me some space. Or maybe just because it was cold tires, but I can't tell you honestly at this point. We're battling for 5th, but I kind of want him to take it. Or at least just to get us back up with the pack. Oh god. Yes, here you should have me. Just, oh my god, if he had stayed wide, he would have had me. Okay, he's got me. There we go. And honestly, that's what I wanted in that position. I wanted that guy. File in, because he's not going to fall in behind me. He's either going to be side by side with me all the way down that straight, or he's going to be in front of me and I'm going to be able to catch a groove. Opening laps in F4 are always crazy. Little lock up from him in front of us. The little Mercedes livery exposes his fanness. There's definitely a reality gap with racing that a lot of people really struggle to bridge. And it took me a very, 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 very long time to truly bridge the reality gap of people do this for a living. It's like, yeah, right. But also, no, it stays this cool for quite some time, and as long as it can stay cool for, that's how long it takes before it becomes work. Once you get past the cool factor, it's work. And I only just recently honestly reached that tipping point of like, okay, that's an approachable race car. You know what I mean? Like picking out certain models and going, I could start there, or I could start there. That's fairly affordable. That's too expensive for what it actually is. Why would anyone waste time in that class? Lots of thoughts like this crossing my mind lately. I have always felt like Formula cars were just the purest of race cars. And I've always loved road racing as well. In a different way than I ever loved ovals, because ovals always looked crazy to me. And then I heard some European commentator in a podcast probably, talking about American racing, talking about IndyCar in particular, but talking about American racing in general. A little off track there, gonna give that position right back. Called it a damn slot machine. And I couldn't disagree, but I didn't know what he thought made European racing any different. I didn't understand yet. The stratification is what makes it what it is. A battle for position is like fencing. Much more like fencing than it is like in NASCAR. It's probably more akin to football, like throw a shoulder, toss somebody. Like rubbing is racing in NASCAR, and that I thought was racing, but IndyCar betrayed that you can't really ribbon is racing in this game, not if you actually want to win. So IndyCar seemed to be the game of no mistakes. Like, the winner made 0 mistakes. And that's true, but it's not just a mistake-free race. And this is when I really began to respect it as a sport. It's as close to a perfect game as possible. Okay? In baseball, a perfect game is something that most pitchers never will get to experience. It's not a no-hitter. It is a perfect game. It is no runs allowed, no hits allowed, no walks. So he can't even, like, pass on facing a batter. It's got to be perfect. So, nobody on base is basically the rule. That's so rare in baseball that, like, when you get one, you're almost immediately up for Hall of Fame contention as a pitcher if you have a career to go with it. In racing, particularly at the higher levels, where the competition is fiercely close, ooh, we get loose through there. The winner is the one who came the closest to throwing a perfect game that day. That is simply what it is. He threw down as close to a full race of qualifying laps as anybody else on that track. That is what he did. It was qualifying lap after qualifying lap after qualifying lap. It was not passing this guy and making a move on this guy, and like there are sports where that is more the case. Particularly if they were to reverse grid you, then definitely you got to make passes on track. But the thing is, reverse grid is silly unless qualifying is for points. If qualifying all of a sudden counts for championship points, and it's kind of a free-for-all to see who gets to set the fastest lap, then reverse grid could be a good thing for competition. But until such time that the qualifying points are like almost balanced with sprint and feature race points, I can't imagine that they would ever think about reverse gridding any top level motorsport event, because it simply invites chaos. It invites worse drivers to try to defend against better drivers. So it's a matter of time and a matter of how much damage a worse driver can do to a faster driver behind. Like, I wasn't aware that the ethos of road racing is intrinsically different from that of oval racing. Obviously, in oval racing, if everybody's in the same kind of material, if everybody's in the same kind of equipment, and you have the lead, you're gonna have to defend, kinda. Like, and you're gonna have to be dodgy about it, because it's not a very wide track, and if they are behind you, they have your draft, and if you are out front, you have clean air. So they are going faster than you most of the time. Oval racing is absolutely chess, but it's like playing chess with checkers pieces, if I had to like articulate that. Road racing is absolutely down to tenths of a second, mostly found in qualifying, and then repeating that as many times as possible over the course of the race. As close to perfection as possible. Once my approach to road racing changed, everything else simply became an obstacle to finishing. And that perspective shift was definitely required. But it definitely made the game feel a lot more like work, which is why lately I've been doing races a lot less frequently. And I am analyzing that deeply. Excuse me. Thankfully, there's at least a lot of real-world work that's taking place instead. Trying to keep a bunch of balls in the air that have definitely been on the ground for a minute or two. Trying to get back into music. Got a bunch of killer beats that I haven't done anything with. And I think I'm figuring something out, but we'll take our time and do that right this time, because last time I tried to do it for as cheap as possible, and I got exactly what I deserved. This time, I'm going to try and do it as well as possible and see if that gets me what I deserve. I have found that my best road racing sessions in iRacing have come after at least 20 minutes of practice, normally closer to 30. Also, watching a hot lap of this car and this track absolutely helps you find time that you wouldn't have otherwise found. It's simple as that. If you watch somebody else do it well and you go, oh, that's a third gear corner, I never would have guessed that. I would have taken it in first. Like, there are places like that all over racetracks, and you just don't know where they're hiding until you look up a hot lap. And it isn't cheating. It is called using your resources, kids. If it's available on YouTube for free, take it. If there's a hot lap, if there's a setup for an open setup race, take it. If you're practicing and you know that this guy is at the top of the timing board, watch him. Jump into his onboard. You're allowed. It's totally fair. It's totally legal. Watch how he does it. Be impressed. Rather than being disappointed, go, okay, how can I get closer to that? Don't try to do exactly what he did, because you're going to spin it at turn 1. Just try to learn, right? Because, like, when you see somebody else's braking point who's going 3 seconds a lap faster than you in one corner, you see that they don't start braking until the 1. How, Sway? Right? Like, well, it seems like a couple of them cooked it, didn't they? So maybe it's not the 1. Maybe it's between the 1 and the 2. Because the 2 definitely felt early every time you've done it. But you're also not getting everything out of the brake. Like, looking at telemetry is another thing that made me a better driver. I was really lucky that I had access to that through my little coaching service that I subscribe to. I work with VRS now, but I did like PDS initially. They were just the one that I found first, and they were affordable, and they were focused on the classes that I enjoyed. And I was really trying to figure out how to make races more predictable, which is what it's there for. And I know that sounds like I was trying to suck the fun out of it. I was trying to unlock the fun in it, right? Because if the track is what's killing you every race, there's something wrong with your preparation, okay? If it's not other racers, and if it's the track pushing you into other racers, it's the track still. It's not other racers. Like, if you make a mistake in a corner and you overcook it into somebody and you're like, oh, that was my bad. What happened there? I was racing him so hard that, yeah, you stop paying attention to the track. It's that simple. We're all here to race against this racetrack. If we can keep that ball at the forefront of our minds, that ball in play, all of a sudden, races take on a different countenance. It takes on that fencing look, instead of being so rock'em sock'em robots. So fighter jets and rocket ships, and it becomes much more of a sweet science than it is a toughness game. Obviously, though, as we get closer to full force feedback, it's going to become more of a toughness game again. There's going to be a sweet spot, and we're going to have to gradually inch our way towards reality. But I really do wonder how much the steering forces of something like F4 are in real life. We got an off. We got 4th place out of that. That's very nice. Because they're big, wide tires, but they're not nearly as grippy as like an Indy car, right? An Indy car is significantly less grippy than... I'm not a fan of this track, but we're going to let it go. IndyCar is significantly less grippy than F1, which is why F1 supposedly has power steering. Same for Super Formula. Those cars are so twitchy. That's the rationale for them having the power steering. But it's also why IndyCar drivers are like, yeah, but we're tougher and we actually race because we all have the same equipment. Formula One is designed to be an engineering championship as well as a driver's championship. And Adrian Newey is, I don't want to say a menace. He's Bill Belichick in this game. All right, that's what I'll say. He's Bill Belichick. He's probably the greatest race car designer who's ever lived. You'd have to go back to the founder of Lotus, whose name is escaping me at this moment, and I'm asking forgiveness from all of my English motorsports fans. Shoot, I'm gonna have to Google it now. I can't. Phone is updating. Oh well. We'll find it later. He's the one that said, simplify and add lightness. I'm reaching and I can't find it anyway. Damn, I'm disappointed in myself for forgetting that man's name. But okay, the Lotus guy was the last brutally revolutionary car designer in terms of motorsports. And then we have Adrian Newey, the current designer for Red Bull, previously a designer for Ayrton Senna, for Nigel Mansell, for McLaren, for Williams, for March, for Andretti and IndyCar back in the 70s. I think it was the 70s. He's an absolute stud, all the places that Adrian Newey's been. And he has designed so many championship-winning cars, it's kind of alarming to me. Because it's like, wait, who are the guys he's competing against? Where's their leaderboard? And you do get to see it. It's the Constructors' Championship. IndyCar is only 2 engine manufacturers and 1 chassis manufacturer. And both of the engines are agreed upon. Like they are built to a spec. It's a Honda and a Chevy. Do you want the Honda or do you want the Chevy? I think they actually both even have the same horsepower, but they would never tell you that. I would guess the Chevy has more power, but that the Honda is more efficient. But again, I'm just guessing. That's kind of the character of those 2 brands, though. Which is interesting, that literally brand image plays into car performance to a greater or lesser extent. Like with Ferrari, we know that they're not reliable, but we know that they're very powerful and very fast. But they're not reliable. and even up to their F1 team, damn it. Like, I really want Ferrari to be good, but they just get in their own way so damn always that it's very hard to have faith in them as a team lately. Not because of their drivers, really, but because you don't think that their drivers are going to have the best day they possibly can lately. And I'm going to include this year, but Carlos, love to see it. Love to see Carlos get the win when Max couldn't finish that race. Anyway, jumping back in here, currently in second place. Lap 11. Oh, big wiggle. So we're not going to keep chasing first place. But we're hopefully going to hang on to this. Let's take a peek behind us. Yeah, we know, Alessandro. There's no need to rub it in. Okay, we got a little gap. Not a great gap, but a little gap. Ooh, it's getting slippery. It's the final lap. I'm feeling the pressure, I guess. Oh my goodness, this is just a year ago. So much has changed. So, like I was saying, as we approach real-life steering forces, the bandwidth of what the tires can give you in terms of grip and slip becomes much broader, which is such a key to understanding tire feel and understanding where the weight of a car sits. I tried really hard to visualize it for a long time, but until I got a chance to sit in VR, it didn't make sense. Really didn't make sense until I was in VR. And I was looking around and I was like, oh, right, a 3,000 pound car. When you're talking about a GT car. I mean, I think even the MX-5 is 2,300 pounds. The Civic is 3,200 pounds. Like, all right, that must have been the race conclusion. So we're on our in lap now. But like, engine layout contributes to engine positioning, definitely. But engine layout and position contribute greatly to the weight distribution of a car. A mid-engine race car will almost always be faster around a racetrack, particularly if they're rear-wheel drive cars, than anything front-wheel drive or anything front engine will be. Now, Porsche dance in a weird territory where they have the best handling cars in the world. Yeah. They have the most forgiving handling cars in the world in terms of a rear engine. The rear engine, it seems to be like the weightiest steering and the widest steering, like the hardest mid or rear engine race car to spin seems to be a Porsche. But that doesn't necessarily make it the quickest thing. It just means that a driver can push it harder, which is why drivers like them a lot. And I understand that. But all the bandwidth is in that outside right rear, or outside rear rather. Excuse me. No matter which corner it is you're taking, it's going to be the outside rear that is doing all the lean in a Porsche. In any race car, really, but keeping the weight inside that outside tire, if that makes sense, is the dance that we do. And damn if it isn't a blast. The closer it's gotten to reality, the more fun it's gotten, but also the more stressful it's gotten, the more actual adrenaline has been involved. Understanding that you only get so many goes in a week. Understanding that you can't just jump into another race when you crash, but that it actually has consequences for your license and your score. And once you understand that, it starts to matter. And you don't want it to matter so much that it makes you crazy, but you want it to matter enough. Good night, Dad. I love you too. Love you too. But you want it to matter enough. Oh, I really hope it was showing. I really hope it was showing. All right, anyway. Like I was saying, that was a P2 in the bottom split in F4. And I think that was a terrible drive, but it was fun. So we're going to run with it. We're going to drop those two but we're gonna do one more. Because I don't feel like I was done rambling. Excuse me. We're gonna go to Laguna Seca. And we're gonna do it in the Spec Racer, which I was doing with the clutch pedal and I was doing with the paddle shifters because that's how those cars are driven in real life. No clutch on the upshift, foot flat on the upshift, but definitely use the clutch, right foot braking on the downshifts. It is so much fun. It is an absolute dance, and it is absolutely a kind of sweet middle ground between proper dual clutch and a proper stick shift, because stick shifts are terrible for racing. Don't let anyone tell you different. Yes, I can drive one. No, it's not easy. Yes, there is finesse involved. Holy shit, is there finesse involved? Do you understand? Like, man, it is hard to articulate how much finesse is involved in a stick shift car, especially racing it along the limit, because you're feeling the limit of the tires, but you're trying to negotiate the gearbox the whole time. Not simple. So Laguna Seca, beautiful Monterey, California. In current events for very California reasons. But anyway, if you know, you know. I threw the little Alpine livery on it because I wanted something that looked like an Arrive and Drive series. Or an Arrive and Drive team. Just to kind of adjust the mindset of what this class is. Because these cars are much more approachable when you think about them in real life. And they are much more raceable when you're thinking about them in their real life scale. When you race car view it, right? When you look at it like a little kid, you're like, whoa, it's so big. It's 1,600 pounds. No. Think about how big you are within it. All of a sudden, this thing is a very big go-kart, isn't it? Doesn't it look like the biggest go-kart? A 1.6 liter go-kart? I know, right? Yeah, it has mirrors on it, but it looks like an amusement park ride. It is. We're gonna jump on board for a hot lap here. Let's go to the roll bar. No. Terrible. Better. Unfortunate that we can't see the wheel, but alright, that'll do. It's a go-kart, boys and girls. Solid axle, rear brakes, it has 4 disc brakes, this car does. Solid axle rear, sprung front. So it has a car's front suspension, but it has a go-kart's rear suspension. It has a car engine in it, but it's a Ford Pinto. I'm not even kidding you. I believe it's the same engine as in the Ford Pinto or the Ford Fiesta. Whichever one is the 1.6. 1.8? I'm checking. Oh, I can't. Okay, anyway. It's less than a 2-liter engine, that's for certain. Formula 1600, right? Also known as Formula Ford, also known as Formula Fit, is either Honda Fit engines, Ford, I think Fiesta engines, 1.6, right? And 4-speed gearboxes, and people have a blast. And they're very expensive cars for absolutely no reason discernible to me. I think it must be the suspension on those, because they use the Formula style suspension with the, I think, push-pull rods situation. I know I'm not articulating that well, but I think you know what I mean. Not the wishbones. Anyway. Trying to get actual performance out of a lunchbox like this is very difficult. Because currently, feels like we're going real fast. We just broke 100. And we're gonna miss the corkscrew because we cracked 100. Some cars have the power. Oh my gosh, I was upshifting so early. I had no idea. Oh, I had no idea. Okay. Well, that's gonna frustrate me for the rest of this video. In a race car, you want to redline it. You want to upshift just before the limiter, unless there's a shift point that's definitely like articulated to you for each gear, but that's more of a stick shift thing. They tell you the optimal shift point, but it's like always right below the limiter. Because you want to be as close to the limit as you possibly can before you upshift, because you want it to be spinning as fast as possible when it catches the next gear, so that it brings it up as fast as possible, so that you can accelerate through that gear as quickly as possible. Oh my goodness, no wonder. No wonder I felt so slow. Anyway. Alright, we crack 110 right there, just almost crack 110 right there. We got 109. But okay, you understand that this does not impress anyone. And when it comes to speed measurements, but when it comes to feeling like a race car, damn if this car doesn't have it. Clutch on the downshift, flat on the upshift, paddle shifters. It feels like a race car, and it's expensive as hell to race one. And it's known as a Spec Racer Ford. These cars absolutely crack me up. I understand how competitive it must be at the top, but that also is the part that makes me scratch my head, right? With these guys battling for inches in these cars, I can't really understand why it's worth what they pay for how few people watch. It's so much more like a roller coaster than other kinds of racing because it's so approachable. It's like the MX-5, right? Where you're just getting to go around a racetrack as quickly as you can. Or if you were to ever take a Porsche around or a Ferrari around the same way, like a road car around a racetrack, you're like, whoa, I'm going so fast. You have no stinking idea how fast you can go. Didn't even get to see that guy go off, but we're getting a good angle here. Let's switch it up. So you see how far overhead this feels, right? You see how far forward in the car this feels. You can't even see the wheel. You're looking right over the hood. And you can't see any of the data, which is unfortunate, because I can see it on my dash here now, but I couldn't at the time. I was just working from the cockpit view, and I was definitely looking at a wider angle at this point. Not that this view isn't fun, but it's not the best for understanding how it went. I prefer this one, if I'm being honest. But even this is a little too far for the scale to quite make sense to us. Like, that's honestly better. We keep getting the 13, which I think is funny. But anyway. Spinner, let him go. Hold the inside. That guy took the outside and paid for it. So granted, this is a footwork race, right? This is me with the downshift and everything. Alright, so right foot braking in this race. I don't typically. I usually am using my left foot to brake because I'm racing Formula cars and there's no clutch on the downshift. The engine does half the work and the brakes do the other part. I enjoy the challenge of racing a car with a clutch, but I can't see myself really doing it unless it were going to be like oval racing, right? Or maybe something like this someday, right? If you had money to burn and you wanted the experience, like one time for the one time, do a Spec Racer race. I've heard nothing but good things from people who do it, but looking at them, I'm like, well, I guess it's a lot like IndyCar. Everybody's got the same stuff and it comes right down to the setup. So is F600. Everybody's got a cap on the equipment that you can use. But how often you get a new engine, how often you get new tires, how often you get out and test. These things determine how seriously people take you on race days. And how scared they should be to see you in their rear view. Laguna is an absolute roller coaster. There are certain tracks that are known for being roller coasters, and this is one of them. I wish I could show the inputs without making the screen so messy. But it is what it is. If you look down in the bottom left corner, you can see the steering input, you can see the braking input, you can see the clutch input, and the accelerator as well. I was racing very heavy on the accelerator at this point, but I was definitely upshifting early, I think. Pretty much every gear. So I'm kind of lugging it around the track. I didn't realize how much I was leaving on the table. I was listening to the red light and not to the rev limiter, which is so silly. Anyway. Yeah, I was leaving like 1,000 left on the... Okay, wait. Trying to see where the limiter even is. Okay, the limit's got to be 7 or 6,800 or 6,900 right in there. So we're getting close. Closer now that we're in the race here. Let's see what we can hit at the end of the straight here, because now that we're up in 7th from... Where did we start? 10th. It's a 16 lap race and we're on lap 4. And I'm already losing confidence in my line. Oh man, this is messy. I must not have done practice. I must be experimenting here, which is crazy and so silly. If you're getting faster over the course of a race, you didn't do a good enough job practicing before qualifying. 137, 137. Okay, so I did some practice, but I just lost the groove there. What the heck? How did I put it together for qualifying? Put it together on lap 2, and then never get close to that again. It's like I thought the tires were overheated or something. I just didn't trust my inputs. Yep, I'm locking. I didn't trust my braking points, turn-in points, nothing. And I wasn't pushing the car all the way to the limit, and I knew it, but it felt like a boat. And it is if you're not up against the limit. It's a land ship. But if you're using the tires, it turns into a race car. If you're using all 4 tires. Sim racers know what I mean. Even if you don't have a rig yet, even if you don't have a wheel yet, if you're thinking like a racer, and you know if you are, I will call you a sim racer. Because really all sim racing is the art of visualizing it and trying to bridge that gap as best as you can. There are some real life drivers who are not that great in the sim, and there are some who properly discredit it, but the best ones seem to be very good at the sim. Cough, cough, Max Verstappen, cough. But there's a bunch of them. I ran into Jack Aiken in a Gen 4 or ARCA Cup car race, and it was a ton of fun getting to race with him. We ran into each other twice in the same night. We were just both in the same lobbies, just doing just for fun races. And man, I had needed a good break from road racing, and that was it. That was a great break, because damn, the first race I got to finish ahead of him because he crashed out. The second race, I got to race with him wheel to wheel. Yes, he overtook me. Yes, he took off into the distance. Yes, he probably has more strength from his simulator, and so more bandwidth from the tires before he is scrubbing them. My tires were gone by the time we were battling, and I hope I have a chance. I will certainly take the opportunity to show you guys those races later on, but I am saving the better ones. I know I'm saving the better ones. I'm saving good races. I'm saving cool races that happened at cool tracks. And I'm giving myself an opportunity to provide the exposition. Because, yes, we're on a journey. We've gone through all of the different license classes, and then some. We've experimented with basically every single car in this game, trying to find the one. There isn't the one when it comes to racing. Oop, let's save it. Let's save it. Okay, somebody's through. I was getting breathed on. Alright, cool. They're through, and then try and hang. We'll try and hang with them. Hopefully we won't spin. I'm pushing my turn-in points later because I'm pushing my braking points later, and that's not how you're supposed to do that. Anyway, I'm aware of these things now, which shows character development, shows growth. Whether or not I can prevent them now, that's kind of the key. This equipment gives me a far better chance of doing that than the G29 ever did. As soon as the wheels would break grip in the G29, it was gone, because you would try to course correct, but you would end up overcorrecting because you couldn't feel where the tires catch. In this, I'm feeling where they're beginning to slide, and then able to catch it to the point where it's not going into the wall anymore, or not going all the way around. But if I misjudge a braking point, it's a recovery slide at this point in the career. This was still a year ago. This was a year ago. But I'm trying to knock out some of these early recordings that I saved, because I wanted to go over them at a later date, and this is that later date. Oh my goodness, the oversteer. The wiggles. The full wiggles from this car. Okay, I almost want to take it out for a lap now and see how much faster I can be in it. Because this is making me cringe a little bit. I had said Laguna Seca footwork. Jesus Christ, excuse me. This is lap 7. We are in 9th. It's lap 7. Alright, we're going to hit the fast forward button because I'm disappointed in what I'm showing us so far. Oh my gosh, deep through the corkscrew. Missed another apex there. Got that one, thankfully, but took it pretty slow. Oh my goodness. I'm just criticizing the hell out of my line right now. Okay, we're zipping, but this is what a race car feels like it should look like, right? Anyway. almost getting to 100 miles an hour, but we can't. Oh my gosh. Okay. Guys, there are go-karts faster than this car. And I mean that. Supercarts are absolutely absurd. I would love to see supercarts race at Laguna Seca, but it would be terribly dangerous. I would love to see supercarts race at the Daytona road course. I believe they do. But I hope they have a full field. I don't know if they do. Supercarts are absolutely like motorcycles and are absolutely the next best thing to shoot. Probably Formula 3. Like, the sense of speed is probably closer to Formula 1, but that's because they're cracking 150 miles an hour ultimate speed in a 250cc two-stroke go-kart. Granted, it's a two-cylinder, but holy smokes, it's only a two-cylinder. But it's like they slapped two shifter kart engines together, so instead of 45 horsepower, they've got like 85, 90. And dude, it's not even a much heavier chassis than a regular sprint kart. Like shifter karts, like X30, like Rotax, those are sprint karts. Dirt karts are dirt karts, and then you get into sprint cars, but there's no such thing as a sprint kart for dirt. Those are dirt karts. Those are oval karts. Those are enduro karts, whatever you want to call them. Anyway. This is rough. We're going to fast forward through this because I'm not enjoying myself at the moment. But that's just because I know what this car is now, and I know how much of the limit I'm leaving on the table because I wasn't yet making that reality jump of like, hey, I'm in this car, it's only 1,000 pounds. Instead of it being, all right, it's a race car and you're in the middle. Like, it's not, like, the scale was weird with this car. The scale is off. It's too small to feel so big, if that makes any sense at all. This car feels big. And then you put yourself in it and you realize how little it is and how narrow tracks like these are. Even a big road racing course like Laguna Seca, like, the racing part, everything's so close. When it's wheel to wheel, it's very close. Racing is crazy. It is crazy. But there's an art form to it. There's a martial art to it. When you're all in the same equipment. When you have freedom of equipment, you have freedom to gain advantages and make mistakes when it comes to setup or design philosophy or any of these things. And most of the teams in Formula 1 aren't just second teams. They're kind of knockoff projects, like takedown projects. They're very much like arrive and drive teams. It's about how many sponsorship dollars a driver can bring to a team. It's a bidding war. In a sport like IndyCar, it's about how cheap a driver can get a team to give them a drive for most of the grid. For F1, it's about musical chairs. Like, they're trying to find somebody who can give them the best deal while giving them the best car. And that is so totally 4D chess. It's ridiculous. What Lewis did was amazing. Taking the deal with Ferrari. And then I think somebody said Toto is the one that leaked it. I feel like Ferrari are the ones who probably leaked it. But I'm speaking just completely out of conjecture there. I love that Lewis gets a farewell season with Mercedes. Oh, we're off. And we're back on. I'm glad we saved that. Wouldn't have been able to do that with the G29, I don't think. But that must have been the end of the race. Okay, anyway. What am I pitting for? Yeah, alright, that was the end of the race. We took, what? 9th out of 17. So we probably lost like one IR, like one iRating point. But, alright. License. In oval, I'm an A. My safety rating is at 2.68, and my iRating is at 1381. Sports car license, now that they've finally split the road racing license into two, which I think they should have done quite some time ago, but I'm glad they finally did. I had just recently, gotten bumped before they had split the licenses, from A rating road racing license down to B. And that was because I was racing harder and racing further toward the front and racing against guys who don't want to give positions up. But anyway, we're going to earn those back. We're going to get back to Class A and the sports car stuff, but damn if those cars aren't impossible to control. Formula cars, yes, the same thing happened there, but also F1's kind of dead in iRacing online. I wish it weren't the case, but they're very hard to race. So it is what it is. People don't like to risk their iRating and their safety rating on a car that they don't trust themselves to control. And anybody who trusts themselves to control an F1 car is either lying to themselves or very cocky. So that is what it is. Anyway, we're here enjoying ourselves, watching a couple of races back from the old times. But this was a great place to start, I think. And I think this is going up. I'll talk to you guys soon. This has been fun. This has been Closed Circuit Sports. I'm Drew Goldman. Have a great night.